And welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland Preview Podcast. We've had a few days to digest it, but Sunderland's second half capitulation against Burnley on Saturday is still a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow. However, one team that maybe had an even worse weekend than ourselves is this week's opponents, Luton Town, who lost their local derby with Watford by 4-0, which does beg the question, is now the best or the worst time to face them? And there's kind of only one way to find out, really. And here to preview this weekend's game is Dave from Luton Town podcast, or When the Town. Dave, we chatted yesterday officially, which the podcast will be out later on your podcast, but how are you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm a little bit more over it than I was the other day, yesterday. But you're right. It was a horrendous result for us at the weekend. And yeah, I'm trying to forget about it. So for people to remind me all the time, it's a bit of a pain in the backside, isn't it? But, you know, it is what it is. It was a horrendous result. The performance wasn't good. I hate to say this about our rivals, but we were outclassed in every position on the pitch. We offered nothing. But we went there with such high hopes, and because our form has been pretty decent. And, you know, we capitulated, literally capitulated, and it was hard to be there and watch that, to be fair.
I think it's one of those things that I think if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd feel the same. I'd hate to be reminded of it. But I think 16 years since you faced each other in front of fans, how is the mood? Because sometimes when that happens, you kind of just have to go, well, that's that done. Let's plough on. But is the mood still suffering a bit in the fan base?
Well, look, there are a lot of people that are saying we got it wrong. Yes, we did get it wrong. Nathan Jones said that we had an illness sweep through the team. A bit convenient, but he wouldn't say that if it didn't happen. I think because of the ambition was so high, because we've only lost 2 in 12 games. You know, we're going there on a high. We've beaten Queen's Park Rangers, Blackburn, Swansea. We've drawn with Sheffield and Burnley. And we've beaten Norwich. So of the top 6 teams, we haven't lost to them. So you go there full of confidence. You know, you've seen your team play super well during the season. We've had some cracking away performances. In fact, our away form is much better than our home form. And so you go there and you think we're going to give them a game, and we just didn't. You know, we've all been to games where you hope you're going to play well and you play all right and you get beaten. You go, okay, but we were awful in every department, and it just hurts a little bit more because it's Watford. Had it been, for instance, you guys or anybody else, you come away from that and say, well, we took a bit of a bashing, you moan about it, and then you move on to the next fixture. So there are some fans at the moment that are a bit still on the social media, you know, saying, you know, we need to do something, but you can't get away from the fact we've got a decent squad now and a much better squad than we had last season. So in my opinion, we should be just putting this to bed and pushing on from there.
It's interesting because it was a really surprising result. Obviously, we haven't come up against yourselves this season, but, you know, I've been keeping an eye on it because of the success you had last season. We came up against Watford and got a draw against them with no strikers when we had an injury crisis, which we still have. But Luton are basically chugging along quite well, and Watford are very hit or miss. Everyone will have their own opinion on it. But before we move on completely, which you'd be pleased to hear, Dave, why do you think it went wrong on Sunday? Is there anything you can pinpoint?
Well, look, let's get the thing out of the bag right away. The illness allegedly that swept through the team must be a real thing. So I'm going to put some of it down to that. But, you know, Watford have changed managers God knows how many times. But, you know, they've just sacked the guy from Forest Green. They get Bilic in. He's not performing very well. They've not had that run of results they thought they'd have. So they was on, I don't know, they lost a couple in a row. We was on a high. I think our confidence should have been much higher. But it was only one team on the day that looked up for it. So I think the reason we got it wrong was we underestimated. I think we underestimated Watford quite a lot. I think that was the case. I think as a fan base, we go in there thinking we've got a really good chance of beating them because of our form. I'm not saying our manager inept at all. No, not at all, because he's done well for us. However, our game plan was wrong. Our setup was wrong. And we just didn't. We normally away, we press high. We don't have a lot of the ball when we play away games. And I'm happy with that because we get everybody on the break. And we've had some cracking results playing that way, high press all of the time. But we had nothing. We just had nothing. And I just think it was one step too far. But, you know, we had a good week apart from that game. We'd beaten Queen's Park Rangers. We'd beaten Norwich. So you go into that game full of confidence, but it didn't show. I just can't. I've been trying to analyse why we played so poorly. And I've got to hand it to Watford, and they managed the game very well. They managed the game. They played much better football than we did, and that hurts me to say that. And they knew what it was about, and I don't think our players did at the day. Shame.
It's funny you said that, because I think we were discussing it on your podcast yesterday. Sunderland had a really similar, we're going back a long time here, and I'm sorry, Sunderland fans in advance, when we lost 5-1 to a newly promoted Newcastle, and we, for the first time in years, had gone in as the favourites, and it was just awful. And then the games before and the games after, we beat Chelsea a couple of days later at Stamford Bridge, and sometimes it just does happen. And it was a bizarre result for many reasons. You know, you've touched on it a little bit here, but looking at the month previous, you came into the game having beaten Norwich away, QPR at home, Blackburn at home, not just over like 5 weeks ago. I think you went into the game 7 unbeaten, as you said, 2 defeats in 12. So taking obviously the Watford game out of the equation completely, because it seems like an anomaly, if we're honest. How impressed have you been by Luton this season?
Well, we had a great end to last season, apart from the result from the playoffs, and I think we've recruited well. And the home form hasn't been exactly where we want it to be, but when Luton are on form, they're going to be a hard team to beat. And so I've been quite impressed with them. I'm happy that we seem to almost, and I hope I'm not saying this too soon, we've sort of established ourselves in the division now after the back-to-back promotions. And I'm happy where we are. I think we're pushing forward all the time. I think the manager is doing a great job. I think the fans realise where we are. I know very soon, fingers crossed, that we're going to get to our new stadium, and I think things will push on again from there. So this season, I think, when we're really up for a game, we're hard to beat. And when our strikers are playing well, we score goals. And you just look at the QPR game the other day. I mean, QPR being top of the league right now, genuinely, there's only one team in that game, and that was us. And we gave them a goal at the end. Genuinely, it was an own goal, and we went straight down the other end and scored another one. Literally, QPR were in it, and they're top of the league. So I think we've had some fantastic performances. So we shouldn't be too down about where we are or how we perform. I'd prefer the home form to be better, but then I look at our away form and think, well, that's compensated for it. So yeah, I think we're in a good position. I think we're in a position to push forward and move up a bit. That's how I look at it. If you can play the top 6 and not lose, that's pretty good. And beat 3 of them, that's pretty cool. So I'm quite hopeful.
It's interesting you mentioned the home form there, because looking at the first sort of 16 games, picked up 10 points at home, 14 points away from home. Those away results include wins at Norwich, Swansea, Cardiff, and a draw at Burnley. The home form has seen you lose to Wigan and Preston and draw 3-3 with bottom of the league Huddersfield. It might be a simple question to say Luton are a better away side, but when you actually segment the results out, the home form has been improving. As fans, are you seeing that improvement, or is that just a couple of decent results?
No, I think there is an improvement overall. That's a good question. When I look back at the Huddersfield game, for instance, again, I don't know how we didn't win the game. At Wigan, we capitulated in the last 10 minutes. Up until that point, we're on top. And I don't understand how we gave those away. So yeah, we've been very disappointed with some of the home performances, but more recently, we've got better, and it has got better. I don't like to say, sometimes you do get dragged down to where the other teams are sometimes, and that sounds very arrogant, doesn't it? But I don't mean it in any that way. But when Huddersfield turn up and you're thinking, well, we should do these, and that don't be overconfident with that. But they put up a good performance, and I don't understand how we didn't put them to bed. I don't understand how we didn't beat Wigan, but you don't. But since those, the form has changed, and I think the turning point for me was Carlton Morris getting a goal at home. Because as soon as he got one of those, he started scoring more regularly. I think it was just frustration, because you just know how well your team have played the previous season, how well we recruited, and how we could have got something for all those games. You said we could have got something from them when we was watching it. You're thinking, how the hell have we not got a point out of this, or how the hell have we not got 3 points out of this? Because it wasn't that we were playing terribly, but we knew we could play better. And I think that's the frustration. Since that time, when you get the QPR come down and you get Blackburn come up, you could see that we had quality. You could see that everyone was up for it in the team, and the team was structured well, and the game plan works. The game plan works. Away from home, when you go away from home, the first thing is don't concede. We play high press away. At home, we play a little bit differently. But I think if it's not broke, don't fix it. Why change? That's how I'd look at it. But, I think we're all still quite excited that we can move on and we can move up the league, and the home form can't get any worse. It only has to get better. And then when you do look at it, although the home form is bad, it's not overly bad, is it? We're not that far in the season, and we could look back at the end of it and go, it's just a glitch at the beginning. And I think we're in exactly the same position we were at this point last season. I think exactly the same wins, exactly the same defeats, exactly the same draws. So, and look where we ended up last season. So you can't think that we can't do it again. I mean, this league is tough. It's a tough league. I don't care. I think it's probably more competitive than any other league in England. And I would be saying that if we get anywhere near the playoffs, it'll be a bonus. If we, you've got to be realistic. You can't really push for automatic. You've got to be super lucky to beat all those parachute payment clubs and anybody who's got a lot of backing money-wise. But if we can still push for playoffs, and if we get in them, brilliant. But I think the key for Luton is stay in this division, consolidate. And I think you'll see a different Luton Town in a few years' time as well when we actually move to our new stadium. And for now, I just want to make sure we stay in this league. But I'm very optimistic that we're going to give it a bash for the playoffs again.
Yeah, and I think you touched on the home form there as well, and I think you're 100% right. I don't want to lull Sunderland fans into a false sense of security, but since you lost against Wigan, you haven't lost, which was the 3rd of September, and that includes wins over QPR and the like. So yeah, but I agree with what you're saying. I do think you'll be there or thereabouts, the playoffs. And it's really interesting because when you go back to when we last faced each other, we were both going for promotion in League One. I think it was January. We drew 1-1 at the Stadium of Light. But maybe that wasn't the interesting part. That was maybe the boring part. The interesting part is Mick Hartford was in charge that game due to Nathan Jones moving to Stoke. If we fast forward almost 4 years, Nathan Jones is well into his second spell at Luton after it didn't work out at Stoke, shall we say. But I find it really interesting because in theory, and almost in every situation, I'm sure there's anomalies thereabouts, but successful managers rarely return to the club that did well and do better. It's fair to say Nathan Jones has. A, what was the feeling when he first came back? And B, why has it worked?
A very good question. Before I answer that, can I just say that the 1-1 up at the Stadium of Light for me was an immense part of our current surge of history. Nathan left us under a cloud after we lost at Sheffield Wednesday in the FA Cup, and he's standing there applauding us and beating his chest. And we're all thinking, we've got a great manager here. The next day he left. And people were really angry the way he left. Mick Hartford, legend at our club. He's a total legend. He takes over because he knows the team. And by the way, it's an interesting fact. I'm just going to pop in on your podcast. I'll say it on all mine. I flew to that game, which is crazy because it was cheaper than the train and I went via Dublin. But it was brilliant. For us, it was brilliant. We got a result at your place that no one expected us to get. It really pushed us on and we ended up winning the league, and that is amazing. So then, we're all thinking, well, Mick's not going to stay. Nathan is not doing so well at Stoke. And we're in this thing, we've just won the division and then we take on Graham Jones. And Graham Jones, to be fair, if I can say this, was bloody awful. I don't think he knew the team. I don't think he knew his best team. I don't think he knew the players. I don't think the players had any respect for him. And Mick was one of the main people that went back to our board and said, and Nathan can come back and do a good job. And he literally persuaded our chairman to go back and get him. Now, the other good thing for Nathan Jones in that respect was COVID was here. There were no fans in the stadium. And we had a mini league to stay in the championship that week, that month when he arrived, we were rock bottom. If he's going to keep us up, he's going to become back to where he needs to be. So with COVID around, no one to criticise. We were watching on iFollow and goodness what knows what. And then he starts getting results and we start moving up and we stay up. And that in itself is an achievement because, we was looking at the abyss of bloody League One again. And he saved us, and he literally saved us. And there are some people still that don't like his chest beating. There are some people still that don't like the way that he He talks about the games, but you can't deny he's done the good job. And he sells our club so well. He recruits so well. And I think that's part of it. I think, let's be fair, he probably doesn't need the money anymore because he got paid off by Stoke. A real apologies for my dog barking, by the way. So, he's sitting there. He's been offered another chance. There's no one there to criticise him. And he does a brilliant job. So I think that's why it works. And then you push on. Following season, we consolidate. Season after, we had a great time. His style of football is amazingly good. I believe in what he wants to do at the club now. I don't think he's going to go at the moment. Who's going to come in for him? It has to be a big offer. Because I think he's got the view that we can go further than we are. And with the stadium coming up, with all the future prospects, I think the future's bright for us. If you look at the model that Brentford had, for instance, they've got a nice new stadium. They've pushed themselves into the Premier League. How long they'll stay there, we don't know. But you've got to look at their model and look at our model. And we're thinking we're going the same way. We own the club. It's owned by supporters, really. People that really love the club. They've got good values. And the manager is promoting it all. So, yeah, I think that's why we forgive him. Or most of it. I don't say everybody, but most of us forgive him.
Interesting you mentioned Brentford there as like the model. That's exactly what I was thinking when you mentioned the new stadium. And I know Brentford Stadium, because of the seats and that, doesn't look wonderful at first glance, but I went in the summer for the Euros, the Women's Euros, and it was probably one of my favourite new grounds I've been to. It's really nice. It's really modern. It's really welcoming. Luton have got that coming up. I think there's a lot of chat about when you look at Luton Stadium, the fact that you go through a housing estate and yada, yada. There's reasons, obviously, you're moving on and moving forward, but I'm not 100% sure how much, what attendance you're going to have at that stadium, what your capacity is going to be. But having a stadium like that, those facilities moving forward, and the way that your team's moving forward, teams like Brentford, Brighton, there must be teams that you can look and go, well, if they've done it. Yeah,
why can't we? Yeah, true. The walking through the housings and walking through the houses into terraces, look, it's legendary, isn't it? There's lots of away supporters that you get the photographs all of the time. But to me as a kid, that was the home end, and that was the way I walked into the stadium. I thought, I don't care about that. When we move on, the capacity is going to be 17,500, I think, expandable if it needs to be. But they wanted to build a stadium that wouldn't look half empty, I'd hate to say it. Look at Milton Keynes. They build a 30,000 seat stadium. They get 11,000 in. It looks empty, even though there's 11,000 there. So they want to build a stadium close to the pitch because that's an advantage at Luton at the moment, isn't it? There, and so the stadium is going to be good. I agree with you about Brentford Stadium. I've been a few times. Probably sat in every stand if I'm honest. And it's a nice stadium. It's right in the bang centre of everything, isn't it? There, not so far from where their old ground is. And you'll find that when Luton change and you're on the train down from London, the train station will be just outside the stadium. It's going to be a brilliant thing, and I think it's going to move us on. And it can only be good for us. It can only be good for us because as much as we like Kenilworth Road, and it'll be sad to see it go, it's time to move out, and it's time to progress as a club. What happened when you guys left Roker Park? It's the thing. I mean, I suppose lots of traditions you'll miss, but then you'll create new ones in the new stadium. So I feel that why can't we be a Brighton? Why can't we be a Brentford? There's no reason why we can't. Someone's got to do it, haven't they?
Yeah, Bournemouth, another example as well. There's plenty of examples there, isn't there?
Well, Bournemouth Stadium's tiny. When you go up to Bournemouth, it's not a
11,000.
Yeah, but it's not a great stadium to go to. And it's not a great place, is it? Let's be fair.
Not for me.
No, no, definitely not for you. But, you go in and it's full and it's passionate. And, fair play to Bournemouth for getting where they are. Fair play to them. And, how do they manage to stay up there all that time? It's crazy. What they were somewhere in the 9th or 10th at one point in the division. So there's no reason why. I used to think we were, when I was younger, I thought, Luton have got a following, but we're not a big club. But we've done well in our time, and there's no reason why we can't do more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that there's no counter argument I've got to that. Not that I wanted one, but there really isn't. The way the world works at the minute, in the Premier League and the Championship, and what's going on with it. But regarding Sunderland, we've hit a bit of a sticky patch, but it's maybe easy to overanalyze when you're a Sunderland fan. So I guess from the outside looking in as a Luton fan, you've had a similar, or we're looking to have a similar trajectory as Luton, shall we say, come up from League One, consolidate and go forward. But what have you made of Sunderland start so far, sort of 16 games in, 13th at the time of speaking?
Another good question. I would say to you that when Sunderland come up, my initial thought was, and please don't take this the wrong way, oh, bugger, there's another club we have to really go at to beat them, because we've had some glorious scraps in the few years that we were playing each other, and I've seen games against Sunderland that I'd much rather forget. So I was generally thinking, well, surely they're not going to come up and just bounce through, because every club who gets to the Championship wants to get in the Premiership for the money, for whatever else reasons. And then you had a cracking start, didn't you? You had a really good start, and I'm thinking to myself, oh God, the Sunderland could be the person that takes our playoff place away from us. So I generally thought your start was good. A lack of form, I suppose. I think we talked about your lack of strikers and things like that. But the start really is, could you expect anything more coming from the league that you came up from? When we came up, for instance, I would be happy with just finishing one place above relegation. And it turned out, we finished a couple of places above relegation, but I don't think they're any further lower or higher than I thought Sunderland might be right now. But I was a bit shocked, because I thought at one point you were going to run away with it when the first part of the season, you're in the top half of the table, the top 4, top 3, and you're thinking to yourself, come on, surely Sunderland can't be that good. That's what I was thinking. I'll be honest with you. We came up, and then I think, and I have to be honest with you, I don't know how much money and backing that Sunderland have right now, but if they got a few quid behind them, then you could become real good contenders. And you're not a small club. You've got a huge fan base. You've got a lot of history. You've been in the Premier League. Why wouldn't you get back there? But this season, I'm just going to be totally honest. I don't watch everybody's results, but I am aware of, you've had a good start, a little dip, but that can't go on forever. You don't become a bad team overnight. And I just give me one more result where you can't win, and then you can do whatever you like.
Sounds fair, I suppose. It's funny because, like, Luton, the fact that you got promoted 5 years ago, you're in that position that I think Sunderland, maybe we would hope to be there sooner, but is that maybe over-ambitious? I don't know. But essentially, it's on a similar trajectory. We want to consolidate, then begin to look at promotion as the seasons go by, build up a team of sort of young, hungry players that build up their experience, come here, might have to sell one or two along the way. What is it that Luton did to sort of sustain themselves in this league, though, and then begin to look up as opposed to down? I know that's $1 million question, but...
Again, I don't know if I've got an answer to that one. What I would say, we've improved season on season. So, we had the scraping, and then every season since then, we've moved up. I think that's down to good financial management of the club. No one's paying stupid money for stupid things. I mean, we broke our transfer record for Carlton Morris, and nobody knows what we paid for him. But we know we broke our transfer record. But, that's not high. I think our last transfer record was £1.2 million. So we're a very well-run club who play within our means, I suppose. And I put it down to recruitment. I put it down to each transfer window, the transfer team, Mick Harford included in that, who goes out scouting, they get some good players. And the players come in, they want to play for Luton Town, and they want to play for Nathan Jones, actually. They want to play for Nathan Jones. If you love him or hate him, they want to come and play for us. And when they get here, Luton can be a springboard for other people's careers. So I think we get the right player at the right time in their careers. And I think that's why, that's why we every season we appear to have done better than last, or we appear to be stronger than last.
I've got two questions before I go, two completely opposite ones. The last one being predictions, as always, which I always get wrong, so I don't know why I bother. It's a question I've never researched, and I'm aware Google exists, but I went to my first game in 1993 when both Sunderland and Luton were, as we called it, the Ensley League Division 1 then. Yeah. We've played each other at the Stadium Light in quarterfinals of the League Cup, and obviously played each other recently. One thing I've never been able to put my finger on, and you might be able to answer this, why did Luton now play in orange?
Why do Luton now play in orange? That's a very good
Opposed to
question.
white.
Well, we used to when I first started watching it, and for no one because no one can see me, can they? That's cool. My first game was 1970. I went to my first game. Luton played in black and white then, and then we got promoted in 74, I think, and I think we started wearing orange in early 70s, and we wore orange for quite a bit, and then we reverted back to white. And I think then 2020 came back in and there was a poll and they just started doing retro kits. And we started off with a retro kit that was basically my favourite kit from the 70s. And there was a fan poll, but I would prefer us to play in white, but now it's orange. Was there a history before the 70s? Well, if there was, I don't remember it. But I remember Luton playing in black and white for quite a while. In the 80s, we played in white, but our away kit was always orange. And we just switched them around. And I don't mind it, yeah. I don't mind it. Sometimes on TV it looks red, but there you go. The history is probably much, much more than that. But the orange shirts now is Luton. That's not going to change, I don't think.
Just an interesting thing that I didn't even write down as a question. I just went, sure, Luton used to play in white when I was a kid.
Yeah, we would have done. In the 90s and in the 80s, we played our home strips of white. It's one of the things that 2020 did when they first come on board. I mean, we had some absolute idiot owners who had idiot plans, who literally put us into oblivion, not helped by the FA. And if you really, really want to look into the reasons why Luton got relegated to the non-league, you should, because it was outrageous what happened to Luton Town. 40 points deductions in 2 seasons is ridiculous. They literally condemned us to non-league. They should have just relegated us and let us have a go. That's what they should have done. But I think it was a bit of from that position we decided when 2020 came in, 2020 owned by Luton Town supporters, they came in and said, this is what we're going to do. Everyone got behind it and the kit went to orange again. So yes. Although, to be fair, I don't like our current strip anyways, but that's another discussion altogether. But at the moment, we're doing loads of retro kits, and they're all doing a homage to previous kits that we've worn, and they interact between them. So at some point, we might go white again. I kind of like our white shirt.
It's interesting when we've just over the time speaking about this, about Luton going down, Sunderland going up. We discussed it on the podcast last night. One of the best away days we've had, maybe one of the worst home games you've had, was when we won 5-0 and sort of won the league on that day. Just pipping Birmingham, who I think conceded late at Preston. We won the league. And then we went up to the Premier League and we were there for sort of 10 years. And it's funny, in that time, Luton went the opposite way. Obviously, we took Collis Edwards from you in the January, became a total cult hero, loved him. You went down all the way down to non-league. And it's funny, as your improvement began, you started coming back up the leagues, that's when we started going down, and we've kind of crisscrossed. I've never really realised that until I've really sat and chatted to you today, Dave, which is kind of weird. And here we are back together again. But that's by the by.
I remember that 5-0 on account of, obviously I sit in the home end, but on the home side, nearly away end, but it was more Sunderland supporters sitting around me than anyone else. And they're all nice guys. But I've never wanted to get out of a stadium so quick in all my life, to be fair. It was a horrendous day for us, but obviously a brilliant one for you guys.
I think we were in all 4 corners, if I remember rightly.
It was everywhere. Well, it was everywhere. And it, at the time, a lot of Luton fans were pretty peed off by the attitude of the club secretary, who's no longer there, who basically said, well, we had to sell the tickets, we sold them. It was a ridiculous thing to do, but, fair play to Sunderland supporters. It was a big game, wasn't it? It won the league. Why wouldn't you want to be there? I'd do the same. Yeah,
good day. Just reminiscing a bit there.
Yeah, not too much when I'm speaking.
I'll try my best since you're my guest. But predictions, I gave mine yesterday on your podcast. I know for a fact that I'm not going to get it right. I never get it right. This is my worst season so far. Closest I've got is, I think I said 1-0 against Wigan and we won 2-1, which isn't close at all, really. I quite fancy a 1-1, but there is kind of method in my madness with that. I think both teams are going to be hurting quite a bit. You've had a defeat that's difficult to stomach. I also think our defeat's difficult to stomach in the manner that it happened. So I think both teams will be fired up, but have an element of a lack of confidence, which kind of points to a draw for me. There'll be things that are still a bit raw, whilst also probably trying almost too hard to come back and prove that they're not as bad as they were the weekend previous, which to me points to a draw. But I think I'm saying that a little bit hopefully, if I'm completely honest.
Well, we've sat down and we've thought about it a lot. We can't be as bad as we were against Watford at the weekend. We just literally can't. We've already said our form, lost 2 in 12 games, is a really decent form. So I'm optimistic that the right Luton Town will show up on Saturday. The right team, the right tactics, and everybody not ill. I think we can give you a good game. And I think with that in mind, I'm hopeful that we keep a clean sheet. That's the first part. And my second, I think I'm up for Carlton Morris and Adebayo scoring. So I'm going to go for 2-0. However, if the wrong Luton Towns turn up, then it could be any result, couldn't it? And a draw, then I'd have to take it. But I'm hopeful that we can put to bed the ghost of Sunday. Our strikers, Morris and Adebayo, are on good form. And, we don't concede. So I'm going to go with 2-0. And we'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed not for us. But Dave, really lovely chatting and reminiscing and going back over stuff and also coming all the way to the present. But obviously you run a great podcast yourself with other people. Where can we find that if people want to listen to the reaction from the weekend game?
Yeah, brilliant. It's Oh When the Town podcast. It's on YouTube, Spotify, and any other app that you can get your podcasts on. And dare I mention that we do have a Mick Harford special on YouTube. He talks about Sunderland very passionately. And especially the 73 Cup final that day. Even if you just skip to that bit, it's worth it because he's such a legend and he's such a good guy.
To be fair, I actually listened to it last night after we spoke, and it is very good. So I'll second recommend that as well. It's a fantastic episode, and I think it's the first video on your YouTube page. Is that right? Probably.
I go on it quite a lot, and I reminisce just talking to him. He was just such a good chap, and he's such a legend, and we're hoping that he gets over all his illness at the moment, and he's here for a long time. But if you talk about statues outside grounds, he'll be one of them eventually or straight away. He's a good man. Anyway, Thanks for having me on. By the way, it's been a great chat.
Pleasure, Dave. Absolute pleasure. As always, from my side, like, subscribe, share if you want. If you don't, that's fine. I don't care. It'll be all right. But thanks for joining me, Dave. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.